Many protests in France. Hello. Welcome to the Breaking News Word channel. More than 300 people arrested in France in protests against pension reform. Proposal does not please two-thirds of the population. Demonstrations took place in Paris, Lyon, Rennes and Nantes. Security forces arrested 310 people this Thursday, 16, in France during the protests that exploded after the government decided to adopt the unpopular pension reform without the vote of deputies, announced the authorities. Trash cans, left uncollected due to strikes by garbage collectors, were set on fire in Paris at night during peaceful demonstrations involving several thousand people. French people protest pension changes. In Paris, police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters gathered in the Place de la Concorde, next to the National Assembly, lower house, following the government's decision. At dusk, the police attacked the protesters to clean up the place. Some groups then moved through nearby streets in the upscale Champs-Élysées district and set fire to the streets. The government claimed that up to 10,000 people went to demonstrations there and 258 were arrested. Another 24 cities in France also recorded demonstrations, which brought together a total of 52,000 people, according to a police report. The cities of Rennes, West, Nantes, West, and Lyon, East, also recorded incidents. 54 police officers were injured. Two-thirds of French people, according to polls, are against the plan imposed by the president. More than 8 in 10 people are unhappy with the government's decision to skip a vote in parliament, and 65% want strikes and protests to continue, a poll by Taluna Harris Interactive showed for RTL Radio. The government's decision to use the controversial Article 49.3 of the Constitution to adopt the increase in the retirement age from 62 to 64 years without submitting the measure to the vote of deputies, for fear of losing the vote, fueled the protests this Thursday. On Friday morning, nearly 200 protesters blocked the Paris Ring Road for half an hour, noted an AFP journalist. The government is under pressure and is awaiting the result of the no-confidence vote announced against Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne's executive. The vote is due to take place early next week, and if the censure motion is adopted, that too would overturn the reform. The French press is unanimous in criticizing President Emmanuel Macron for having used the controversial mechanism to adopt his project. The newspapers consider that the resource demonstrates the failure and weakness of the ruler. The use of 49.3 is not a failure, said Labour Minister Olivier Dussopt. Our vocation is to continue governing, said government spokesman Olivier Véran. Do you think the population's revolt against the measures taken by Emmanuel Macron is right? Will the reform really affect the poorest sections of the population? Why doesn't the government take another measure? If you want to know more, like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay informed.